So you just got done watching the video on joint planes of movements and different aspects, and I just want to do short, like 4 slides, 5 slides on some practice for that. And so when we look at human movement, we're not only trying to analyze, but we might quantify the aspect as well. And remember, there's 360 degrees to a circle, and we use the same degree vernacular for describing movement. So just remember, 90 degrees is 2 segments that are at right angles, so the relationship between the floor and the wall. Half of that is 45 degrees, and a third of that is 30 degrees. And when you see something start here, and it goes from this position, 0 degree starting position, to there, that was about 60 degrees of range of motion. So in class, we usually break up into groups, and we would analyze these 3 exercises. Remember, all exercise has a start position, a movement, and a reposition back to aspects. So when you look at here on the left, hopefully you're familiar with the squat, but you start in a standing position. You initiate the movement by dropping down towards the floor. That's the start position here. This is the exercise, and then the reposition is right back up. So one rep is down and up. Same thing with a push-up. You start here and you go down and up. So whatever position you do, whatever goes up must come down. Whatever comes down must go up. You have a start and reposition. In this case, we want to analyze these 7 joints, and we want to see what's happening from A to B, 1 to 2, 3 to 4, or 5 to 6. So when we look here at this position here, we're starting in relative neutral, right? We're extended at the knee, extended at the hip, and my arms have come forward into flexion. And as I initiate the exercise, I'm dropping down and I'm doing knee flexion, hip flexion. There shouldn't be any movement at the spine, so the spine didn't do flexion or extension. And the shoulders, they might have raised a little bit, so I just went further into shoulder flexion. Now, if I come out of this position to go back to reposition, I'm going to do knee extension, hip extension, and a little bit of shoulder extension. Just notice that what I did on the way down was the exact opposite on the way up. And when we start looking at muscle involvement, the muscles that you do an exercise for, they don't change from this position to that most of the time if you're doing resistance exercise. So we look here in this position, we look at the starting position, end position. The only thing that's really moving is the upper extremity, so we'll just analyze that. But if we wanted to analyze here, we're neutral at the ankle. Ooh, I forgot over here. Also, the knee came forward a little bit. So when the knee came forward, did the shin come closer to the dorsal surface? So the shoelaces is the dorsal surface. The bottom of the shoe is the plantar surface. Did that get closer or further away? If it got further away, that would be plantar flexion. If it got closer, it would be dorsiflexion. And since the foot didn't move and the knee came forward, we can only assume that the shin got closer. This was dorsiflexion as well. So I forgot the ankle assessment in the squat. All right, let's go back over here. So neutral at the ankle. This is bent from anatomical position. So we're at more than 90 degrees of knee flexion, probably like 100, 120. We're neutral, extended through the hip. Arms aren't to the side, they're out in front of them. So always think with the shoulder. The shoulder is the weird guy. If the arms go forward, think F, that is shoulder flexion. So if the arms move forward, that's shoulder flexion. So we're flexed at the shoulder, the elbow is straight, so that's extension. And when I start this exercise, I am doing, if I was flexed and I'm going back, the opposite of flexion is extension. And then this is elbow flexion. Wrists and hands are neutral. Let's look here at the push-up. This one's the most tricky one. Push-up is kind of like a plank position, so I'm not going to analyze this because if she does her technique right, she's good. So we're going to be looking at the elbow and the shoulder. So this can go one of 2 ways. You could look at this as a as a transverse plane motion or a sagittal plane motion, and you wouldn't be wrong because if you look at, you can't see from this angle, but she probably did what I said most people do, is she split the difference between the 2 planes. So she is, in order to do this exercise, let's say that she started from the bottom and she pushed herself up. Her arm is either going forward into, which would be shoulder flexion, or if she takes a really wide position, that's horizontal adduction, that's transverse plane motion. And then when she goes, so she started here, that's either shoulder flexion adduction, so she get in this position, and when she comes down, she's going to do the opposite of horizontal abduction or shoulder extension. What didn't change is the elbow. The elbow has 1 degree of freedom, so it can't operate in different planes, but she went from a flex position to an extended position. So I know we would spend a lot more time with this in class, but this is recorded video. You can go through it, and you can definitely ask questions during our live session, and we can go over this again as a group. But this is kind of what's going to happen for your Unit 1 assignment for the movement assessment. Just to set the stage for the next lecture, because this is where it gets more complex, is that we're going to eventually start adding now muscle participation or muscle involvement. And we're not going to go into specific muscles, but we're going to be looking at muscles as muscle groups. And we get introduced to these terms, and this is also chapter 4, that you have your agonists, which are your prime movers, your antagonists, which are the opposite muscles. You have synergistic muscles that are supporting muscles, and then you have a co-contraction. And the reason why we talk about this is this agonist-antagonist relationship is that muscles can only pull. So when you get into a position, like getting down in the bottom position of a squat, you have to have a certain set of muscles that get you out of that position. Sometimes it's gravity that pulls you down, some external force, but internally wise, muscles can only pull. They can't push. So you have all these muscles paired in this agonist-antagonist relationship like a tug of war. And I have a video that goes into detail on that on the Blackboard shell, and we're going to spend quite a bit of time there. But I wanted you to get started thinking in terms of this aspect here, these types of muscular actions: concentric, eccentric, and isometric. And it's basically looking at, are you going with gravity? Are you going slower than gravity? Or are you overcoming gravity? And this, looking at these relationships, will determine is which muscles are involved and what type of activity is happening there. But most importantly, the muscle involvement. So again, look through this slide. Try to become familiar with these concept of concentric as an accelerative aspect, eccentric as a lengthening or deceleration, and isometric as no movement at all. And then we will start to look at this in more detail. But I think that's it for introduction to that. And hopefully that was helpful. And we'll revisit this as you need. Thanks.